Okay, let's talk about a transaction. What is a transaction? A transaction means you begin transaction and at the end you either commit transaction or roll back transaction. And in the middle you can have SQL statements. Okay? They can be select, they can be update, they can be insert, they can be delete, any type of statement inside. Why do we need this? And why do we use it in Prosper? In Prosper, when you say progress a document, you're progressing a document. You're changing the status of the document. And you're calculating some values inside the items of that document. Maybe you're calculating the discount, and you're modifying every row inside. You're summing the totals and to calculate the total tax inside that document. You're generating a row. After you do all the stuff, you go back to the document and you modify the status UID, and maybe you write a history record saying that this person did this thing at this time. How many statements are there? A lot of statements. Now, let's say while you're doing this, you're executing many statements. While you're doing these statements, something happened. The network fell down. The computer crashed. The electricity went away. What do? Half of it is part of it is done, part of it is not done. It doesn't work like that. The same thing, the same example they always do on when you go to the ATM machine. You go to the ATM machine and you ask the ATM machine to give you $100. Now, let's say that you entered your PIN code and you asked for $100 and it gave you $100. Now, when you just are about to take the $100 from the machine, the electricity went down. What happened? You either, if your account was not yet debited with $100, that's really great. You win $100 and the bank loses $100. But the bank is much smarter than that. What did it do? It debited your account before it gives you the $100. Well, it debited your account for $100 and it didn't give you the $100. What happens? You lost the $100 and the bank gained. We don't want nobody to win and lose. We want to work fair. Either we need to, if we started the transactions, once we decide the transaction is done, you commit the values to the database. If the transaction is not done, you don't commit the values to the database. That's what the idea here. We begin the transaction, we do all these kind of things, and at the end we commit the transaction. Now, if while we're doing this, some SQL statement that you launched here wasn't correct. It violated a key, or it violated a null constraint, or if it violated something in a maximum value or a minimum value. Okay, what happens? You want to roll back the whole thing. So if something happened, if an error happened, you want to roll back the whole thing. If something doesn't happen, normal, if everything continued as normal, which is 95%, 99% of the cases, an SQL commit will do, and the SQL is capable of committing every single thing that you did, or rolling back every single thing that you did, which is really nice feature of SQL. We use it in Prosper when you start doing either an insert or an update or a delete or a progress. We always use it. We open a transaction at the beginning and we let you update. Once you finished and the database said okay, everything is okay, we do commit. If for some reason something failed in the middle, or let's say at this moment the electricity went down or your network went down, automatically the SQL will notice that you did not do an SQL commit, it will do after a while what? An SQL rollback. Now, but in Prosper, sometimes, since it's a multi-user system, sometimes you're using a resource without committing. For example, there's the function called sequence that will go to the sequence table and will generate a sequence for you. How does it generate a sequence for you? It will go to that sequence table. Let's say you're doing an invoice. You're creating a new invoice and you want a sequence for that invoice. So there is a sequence table where it has the current value this much. It will cancel the current value and will add 1 to it, or will add whatever is configured to it, and will get that value for you. What did it do? It did an update on that table. Now, if you did an update on that table and you're inserting an invoice and somebody else also is inserting an invoice, he wants to insert an invoice, he wants a sequence, what happens? He goes to that table to try to do what? To add 1 to it. But you have not committed your work. You're in the middle of something. Okay? You're locking a resource, a very important resource called the sequence. What do you want to do in this case? You want to force an SQL commit to happen to make sure that that resource, after taking it, is freed so others can use it. Okay? This is very important. That's why we have a UDI in Prosper that will go and will tell you, will analyze your event functions and will tell you you have possible locks in these areas. Why? You should not, for example, call the sequence before insert. When should you call the sequence? Once you don't have any user interactions, you call the sequence. Because if the guy was creating an invoice and it takes him how much? Maybe it takes him 5 seconds to complete an invoice. But if once he said okay and you called the sequence, you're locking this, and before he presses enter, his wife called. He receives a phone call. What does he do? He stops everything and he answers the phone call. What happens to everybody that are waiting for this resource? It's locked. That's why you should not run. The SQL commit is there to solve a bug in your situation. You should not call it. The SQL commit function, it should not be called. But in certain situations where you have to, and I wouldn't know why, you can call the SQL commit to commit whatever you have right now, so to allow other people to continue. But you should not call it. You should move that sequence from here, move it all the way immediately before the SQL commit, because you don't want to call something that would lock anything in the database and then ask for something or ask the user for something. You ask everything at the beginning, then once you finish and the user pressed the enter, then later you call the SQL, you call the sequence if you want to make sure that you don't lock the database. Thank you.